Breaking soulmate alert, something changed in their heart last night, and it's bringing them closer to you. My beloved child, stop for a moment and listen, because something inside the person connected to your heart may have changed in a way you never expected. Last night may have brought them face to face with a truth they had been avoiding for far too long. They may have tried to distract themselves, convince themselves, or move forward as though the connection between you meant nothing, but something happened inside them that made pretending much harder. A memory surfaced. An emotion returned. A realization became impossible to ignore. And suddenly, the person who had been trying to create distance began questioning why they ever walked away in the first place. My beloved child, this is not about chasing them, forcing them, or trying to control what they do next. This is about understanding that people sometimes need silence before they can hear their own hearts. They may have spent days, weeks, or even longer trying to appear strong, but when everything became quiet, their thoughts may have returned to you. They may have remembered the conversations you shared, the moments when you understood them without demanding an explanation, the way your presence made them feel safe, and the small details they never thought they would miss. Last night may have been one of those moments when everything became emotionally real again. They may have asked themselves a question they had avoided for a long time: why am I still thinking about this person? And my beloved child, once a person begins asking that question honestly, they cannot easily return to pretending they feel nothing. They may have looked back at everything that happened between you and realized that some decisions were made from fear rather than truth. They may have recognized that they pulled away when they should have communicated. They may have stayed silent when they should have explained. They may have acted distant because vulnerability frightened them. And now they may be realizing that the distance they created did not give them peace. Instead, it gave them more time to think about what they lost. My beloved child, perhaps you have wondered why someone who seemed to care could suddenly become cold. You may have replayed old conversations, searching for the moment everything changed. You may have asked yourself whether you were too emotional, whether you cared too much, or whether you somehow caused the separation. But do not carry responsibility for another person's inability to communicate. Their fear was theirs. Their hesitation was theirs. Their choices were theirs. You can acknowledge your own mistakes without accepting blame for everything. Sometimes two people care deeply about each other and still become separated because neither knows how to handle the intensity of the connection. One person becomes afraid of being hurt. The other becomes afraid of being abandoned. One becomes silent. The other becomes anxious. One pulls away. The other tries harder. And eventually the cycle creates exactly the distance both people feared. My beloved child, perhaps your soulmate is finally seeing that pattern clearly. Perhaps they are realizing that their attempt to protect themselves actually created the pain they were trying to avoid. They may be remembering moments when you reached out and they did not respond the way they should have. They may be remembering times when you were patient with them while they were confused. They may be remembering your kindness during moments when they were not emotionally available enough to appreciate it. And those memories can become powerful when a person is alone with their thoughts. Last night may have brought them a moment of emotional honesty. Maybe they could no longer distract themselves. Maybe the usual routines did not work. Maybe they went to sleep thinking they had everything under control, only to wake up emotionally unsettled. Maybe they saw something connected to you before sleeping. Maybe they heard a song. Maybe a conversation reminded them of you. Maybe they simply felt an emptiness they could not explain. Whatever the trigger, the deeper realization may be the same, the connection is still affecting them. My beloved child, do not take this as a reason to stop your life and wait. Instead, take it as a reminder that emotional stories are often more complicated than appearances suggest. Someone can appear to move on while still processing what happened. Someone can smile while carrying regret. Someone can act indifferent while secretly wondering whether they made the wrong decision. Human beings are complicated, and emotions do not always move in straight lines. Sometimes a person needs distance to understand closeness. Sometimes absence reveals value. Sometimes losing access to someone forces a person to understand what their presence meant. And perhaps your soulmate is now experiencing that realization. They may be asking themselves whether you have moved on. They may wonder whether you still think about them. They may wonder if you would even answer if they contacted you. They may fear that they have waited too long. That fear could be one of the strongest emotions they are experiencing right now. My beloved child, if you have recently felt a strange emotional shift, do not immediately assume that every feeling is a sign of a specific event. Your own heart may simply be processing memories. But if you find yourself thinking about the relationship differently, use that moment to become more grounded, not more anxious. Ask yourself what you actually want. Ask yourself what kind of relationship would make you feel secure. Ask yourself what you would need from this person if they returned. You have permission to hope, but you also have permission to have standards. Love should not require you to abandon your boundaries. My beloved child, your soulmate may be approaching the same realization from their side. They may be thinking, if I go back, I cannot do it the same way. They may understand that returning without changing would only recreate the same problems. They may know that if they contact you, difficult questions could follow. Why did you leave? Why did you become distant? Why did you stay silent? What changed? Can I trust you again? Are you really ready now? They may be nervous because they know those questions are reasonable. And perhaps that is why they have not spoken yet. It is not necessarily because they do not care. It may be because they know that once they open the door, they cannot hide behind silence anymore. My beloved child, imagine what it feels like to carry a message in your heart that you are afraid to send. You write something. You read it. You think it sounds too emotional. You delete it. You write again. You wonder whether the other person will respond. You imagine rejection. You imagine forgiveness. You imagine everything changing. Then fear takes over, and you put the phone down. This cycle may have happened more than once. They may have wanted to reach out but stopped themselves because they did not know how you would react. They may have wondered whether you still had room for them in your life. They may have wondered whether you had already healed. And perhaps seeing you move forward has made them realize that they cannot assume you will always be available. My beloved child, your growth has changed the energy of the situation, not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped giving all your power to uncertainty. When you stop chasing answers, you begin hearing your own voice again. When you stop constantly checking whether someone is coming back, you begin building a life that does not depend on their return. That independence can be deeply transformative. And if this person is truly meant to reconnect with you in a healthy way, they must meet you where you are now. They cannot demand that you return to the version of yourself who tolerated confusion. They cannot expect you to forget everything simply because they suddenly miss you. They must understand that your heart has changed too. My beloved child, perhaps you once thought that the only way to preserve the connection was to hold on tightly. Now you are learning that sometimes love requires space. Space does not always mean the end. Sometimes space reveals whether something is strong enough to survive without constant reassurance. If a connection is genuine and both people are willing to grow, distance can become a period of reflection rather than destruction. But remember, reflection must eventually become action. Thinking about someone is not the same as communicating with them. Missing someone is not the same as being ready for a relationship. Feeling regret is not the same as taking responsibility. My beloved child, keep those distinctions close to your heart. If this person comes forward, listen to what they say, but watch what they do afterward. Consistency is the language that turns emotional promises into reality. They may tell you that they missed you. Wonderful. But do they show up? They may tell you that they have changed. Good. But do their choices demonstrate it? They may say they want another chance. Then ask yourself whether they are willing to build trust slowly. You do not have to decide everything in one conversation. You are allowed to take your time. My beloved child, perhaps the biggest emotional shift happened when they realized that you were not waiting for them in the same way anymore. Maybe they expected you to remain emotionally attached to the past, but they sensed that you were becoming stronger. They may have noticed changes in the way you communicate, the way you carry yourself, or the way you prioritize your life. Even without direct contact, people can sometimes sense when someone has emotionally stepped back. And that realization can create urgency. They may suddenly wonder whether the door is closing. They may wonder whether someone else will enter your life. They may wonder whether their hesitation cost them the opportunity they once had. But my beloved child, if their urgency comes only from fear of losing access to you, be careful. You want someone who chooses you because they genuinely value the relationship, not simply because they fear someone else will have you. Fear can start a conversation, but it cannot sustain a healthy relationship. Love, respect, and maturity must take over. My beloved child, perhaps they are also beginning to recognize the difference between attraction and emotional connection. Attraction can be immediate. Connection develops through experiences, trust, vulnerability, and shared understanding. They may have met other people, spoken to others, or tried to move on, but something about the connection with you may have remained distinct. This does not mean every memory is a guarantee of reunion. It means that meaningful connections can leave lasting impressions. They may be realizing that what they experienced with you cannot simply be recreated by choosing someone else. And that realization may be uncomfortable because it forces them to confront their own choices. They may have to admit that they walked away from something they did not fully understand at the time. My beloved child, regret can be one of the strongest teachers. A person sometimes learns the value of communication only after experiencing the consequences of silence. They learn the value of presence after experiencing absence. They learn the importance of appreciation after losing access to something precious. Perhaps your soulmate is in that learning process now. If so, let them learn. You do not need to teach every lesson for them. You do not need to rescue them from regret. You do not need to convince them that you are still available. Let their own realization motivate their choices. My beloved child, there is a possibility that the next communication may begin very casually. Do not expect a dramatic confession immediately. Sometimes people who have been emotionally distant start with something small because they are afraid of exposing too much too quickly. They may ask how you are. They may mention a memory. They may send a simple greeting. They may react to something you share. The surface-level message may seem ordinary, but the emotional meaning behind it could be significant to them. If this happens, stay calm. Do not immediately pour out everything you have been feeling. Let the conversation develop naturally. Give them the opportunity to demonstrate why they reached out. My beloved child, you do not have to prove that you still care. If you care, that truth exists inside you. You do not need to perform it. Let them take responsibility for reopening the conversation. If they want to explain, allow them. If they want to apologize, allow them. If they want to ask about your life, answer only what feels comfortable. You are not obligated to provide unlimited emotional access simply because someone has returned. Your boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. My beloved child, perhaps this person has been afraid that you would reject them. Maybe they imagine you are angry. Maybe they believe they do not deserve another opportunity. Maybe guilt has kept them away. But if they genuinely want to repair things, they must eventually face that fear. They cannot heal a broken connection from a distance while refusing to communicate. They have to step forward. They have to risk hearing the truth from you too. Maybe you will tell them that they hurt you. Maybe you will tell them that their silence changed you. Maybe you will tell them that you cannot return to the past. They may need to hear those words. Love is not always about making someone feel comfortable. Sometimes love requires truth. My beloved child, you deserve a relationship where both people can speak honestly without fearing abandonment. If one difficult conversation destroys the relationship was already fragile. A healthy connection can survive honesty. It can survive boundaries. It can survive difficult questions when both people are committed to understanding rather than winning. Perhaps this is what your soulmate is beginning to realize. They may have spent too much time trying to avoid conflict, only to create a larger conflict inside themselves. Now they may be thinking about how much easier everything could have been if they had simply spoken honestly from the beginning. But the past cannot be rewritten. What can change is what happens next. My beloved child, do not demand that the future erase the past. Let the future prove whether growth has occurred. If they are genuinely different, you will see it over time. If they are only temporarily emotional, that will also become clear over time. Time is your ally because you no longer need to rush. You can observe. You can listen. You can feel. You can decide. My beloved child, maybe last night they finally admitted something to themselves: I still love this person. Maybe they did not say it aloud. Maybe they simply felt the weight of the realization. Maybe they stared at the ceiling, remembering conversations and wondering what your life looks like now. Maybe they imagined what it would be like to see you again. Maybe they wondered whether you would smile or remain distant. Maybe they imagined apologizing. Maybe they imagined holding your hand again. These thoughts can be powerful, but remember that imagination is not action. Let their imagination become action only if they are ready. My beloved child, you are not required to interpret every dream, coincidence, number, song, or feeling as evidence. Stay grounded in reality. Your heart can be spiritual and hopeful while your decisions remain practical. That balance will protect you. If someone truly wants to be with you, they can communicate. If they truly value you, they can show consistency. If they truly want reconciliation, they can take responsibility. You do not need to live entirely inside signs when real actions are available. My beloved child, perhaps the greatest thing that changed last night was not their feelings but their willingness to admit those feelings. They may have always cared. They may simply have refused to acknowledge it. There is a major difference. Suppressed feelings can remain hidden for a long time, but they do not always disappear. Eventually something triggers them. A memory. A loss. A lonely evening. A conversation. A realization. A fear. And when that happens, the person has to choose whether to continue suppressing or finally face the truth. Perhaps your soulmate is beginning to choose truth. My beloved child, if that is happening, let it unfold naturally. Do not interfere with their process. Do not create pressure. Do not try to force a confession. If they need courage, they must find it themselves. If they need to apologize, they must choose to do so. If they want to rebuild trust, they must participate. Your role is not to carry them across the bridge. Your role is to decide whether you are willing to meet them on the other side. My beloved child, you may have once believed that love meant proving your loyalty by waiting forever. Now you are learning something deeper. Love can include waiting, but love should never require you to stop living. You can love someone and continue your journey. You can remember someone and still laugh. You can miss someone and still build your future. You can hope for reconciliation and still accept whatever reality brings. That is emotional maturity. And perhaps your soulmate is only now beginning to understand it. My beloved child, they may have thought that your love was guaranteed. Now they may understand that love is a choice made repeatedly by two people. They may realize that losing your trust would mean losing something they cannot easily replace. They may remember how naturally you cared for them. They may remember that you saw parts of them they rarely showed others. That can make your absence especially noticeable. When someone has experienced being deeply understood, superficial connections can feel different afterward. They may begin comparing emotional experiences without even intending to. And that comparison may bring them back to you mentally. My beloved child, perhaps they are asking whether there is still a chance. The answer is not something they can receive from a prediction. It is something they must discover through respectful action and honest conversation. If they come back, let them ask. Let them explain. Let them show you who they are now. You do not need to decide based on who they used to be or who you hope they will become. Judge the relationship by what is actually happening. That will protect your heart from repeating old patterns. My beloved child, you have already learned that chemistry alone is not enough. A strong emotional connection can still become painful if communication is weak. Passion can exist alongside inconsistency. Love can exist alongside fear. Two people can care about each other and still need to learn how to relate in healthier ways. If your soulmate is changing, the evidence will eventually appear in how they communicate. They will become more direct. They will become more willing to discuss uncomfortable subjects. They will stop disappearing when emotions become intense. They will begin taking responsibility for their part. They will respect your boundaries instead of testing them. They will not ask you to forget the past, they will help create a future that makes the past easier to heal. My beloved child, perhaps that is the real meaning behind the shift you feel. Something is moving from fantasy into reality. Feelings that once existed only internally may be seeking expression. Thoughts may be becoming conversations. Regret may be becoming accountability. Longing may be common.